Hey, welcome back to Evil's Comics. This guy right here is Evil Mike, or Mike if you prefer. And this is going to be my Night Terrors Week 3 overview or review, however you want to put it. Before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe on this guy's channel. It does help. All the likes, comments, you know, it doesn't cost you anything. It's absolutely free. Even the subscription is free. It doesn't cost you anything. I don't have a schedule, so you might want to hit the bell. It'll keep you in the know when I do drop videos, in case you ever wondering what reviews I'm going to drop or something like that. So I got 5 different books to go over this week for week 3 and Night Terrors. There's not a main book this week. There kind of is, but not officially. So this week it's just 5 different nightmares that we're going to go through. We got Nightwing, Superman, Punchline, Catwoman, and Wonder Woman. Before we get started, I'd like to mention that I liked all of them. I want to say I'm kind of saving my favorite 2 for the last, but honestly they're all really good. On another note, I will put timestamps below if you want to skip to a certain nightmare, or I will have all the artists, writers, the inkers, and the letters information down below. I don't want to waste the time. These videos are already long as it is. So let's get into it. No particular form or fashion this week. There is no reading orders, just 5 random nightmares. So we're starting out with Nightwing. This one, there usually is like a little backstory before we start this up, but this one's not. It's just Nightwing wakes up. He's been drugged. He wakes up in Arkham Asylum. He doesn't remember, why he's, going to Arkham Asylum, why he's being drugged. But this isn't like the other books where we get to see Nightwing before the nightmare. This is straight into the nightmare, because right off the bat, you'll notice that the cops are animals, and specifically pigs. There's a lot of crazy talk that's going on, but these little red panels right here are letting you know what he's supposed to be locked up for. And at this point, it's because he killed someone. All of Arkham Asylum is going crazy. Two-Face does a lot of the narration during this story. But it's basically giving Nightwing props, and Nightwing doesn't understand at first. It's not disclosed right off the bat that that's what he's in Arkham Asylum for. They kind of like let it linger throughout the book. But that's what he's in for. It's who he murdered is the kind of, cliffhanger kind of thing. But as we go through, it's basically all the other inmates that he runs into, like, man, I can't believe you did that, you're so cool, blah, blah, blah. There still is hatred. He's a superhero that killed somebody kind of thing, but on another note, there's hatred on another level, and we'll get there. There is one side note that there is, he gets a cell, and there's supposed to be someone in the cell with him. When he goes in there, he thinks everybody's crazy because he looks around and there's nobody in the cell. Later on, he does start to hear somebody in the cell, and he realizes he didn't check under the bed. And we find out it's none other than Scarecrow that's under the bed. At this point, and he doesn't really look like the Scarecrow that we know. Again, nightmare version of Scarecrow. But basically at this point, it's Nightwing's like, that's why this doesn't feel right. It's not just the pig, cops. There's most of the other people in this book are all animals kind of thing. It didn't explain why. Maybe an Animal Farm reference or something like that. But basically at this point he believes that it's Scarecrow that drugged him, and Scarecrow is like, no, I didn't drug you. And he was like, this is all your own thing. You did this on your own. We do get to the point where like the nightmare starts messing with him and stuff like that. At this point, he's been fighting back the whole time, and he's going through treatments in Arkham Asylum and all kinds of stuff. But at this point, they kind of like, highlight right here, they make it look like he had killed Batman, or maybe Batgirl or something like that. And that's where you start, like, you don't really know like who he killed kind of thing. Insomnia is there. I mean, he's if you haven't been keeping up with the Night Terrors event, that's what Insomnia is all about. He is looking for the Nightmare Stone. He believes one villain or hero has the Nightmare Stone, and that's the point of each individual nightmare, is Insomnia is trying to find that stone. So in the end of this issue, we do find out that it was Batman that Dick had killed, and that's kind of where this issue leaves off, you know. Next up, we're going to touch base with Superman. This one we do get a little bit, like, because Superman was there when they found, what is it, Dr. Destiny? Yeah, I was going to say Dr. Light, but Dr. Destiny, the dream construct of Dr. Destiny. When this whole mystery began, Superman took off to go somewhere. I think he was going to Steelworks or Supercorp to, you know, he wanted to contact some people that might be able to help with the dream type thing. But before he gets too far into it, he is hit with that nightmare wave. Again, remember, he is in flight, and he falls asleep, falls out of the sky, and that's where Clark's nightmare kind of takes place. It goes back to early days of Superman. We get to see a lot of different nods to, you know, different times and things that happened throughout Superman comics, like Jimmy being a robot, like Lois being in different outfits. Like I don't know specifically the references. The Jimmy one I do, I recognize that. But basically, he finds out that in this nightmare or whatever, that him and Lex Luthor teamed up and they basically saved the world. There's no more need for Superman, kind of thing, until there's this massive, like, you know, wave that comes through, and there's this like ever-present message, like, you can't save everybody thing. He does go to save this, you know, stop this tidal wave kind of thing. When he goes to go get in this costume, he finds that it's not there, and he's got like a weird looking S that's burned into his chest, or the symbol of hope that's burned, you know, in Kryptonian or whatever. And that's where we get to the main meat of the story. Superman already knows that he's being messed with. This isn't the first time that someone's tried to manipulate his dreams, kind of thing. Insomnia is like, oh yeah, well, I could show you something you hadn't seen before, and he pushes him out the window, and you can see he pushes him through, like, it's just like different multiverses and different times, that kind of thing. But eventually he lands on this pile of like skull and bones, and we find out it's the end of all time. And to greet him is none other than the I don't remember if we got a name. Oh, the Man of Screams is his name. Basically, in a nutshell, this is the Clark Kent. This is Superman, and he is told that at the end of time he will be the only one there. Everybody knows that you know, he is loved. He will live longer than them, and eventually he is also told another version of the story of him, and it's basically that he's been living a lie, that he's not Earth's savior, and he's shown like a flashback of the origin story when he was, you know, when Krypton was destroyed. But in this version, it makes it more look like, you know, he was fired at Earth on purpose, like a gun, and basically he was supposed to come to annihilate Earth, that kind of thing. And that's, you know, and they show some cool metaphorical stuff, you know. But eventually, that's in a nutshell, that's basically like, you know, his nightmare is him becoming that and him not wanting to become that. But before we, you know, end this issue, there was actually a surprise guest, and it looks like, and I'm pretty positive this is Supergirl, but she ends up busting through her nightmare and she enters Superman's nightmare. She got so scared, she was running from stuff, and it is Supergirl, I'm sorry. She ends up greeting Clark here and seeing him with the weird Grim Reaper like axe thing that the man who sleeps or whatever it was, it's so close to the man who laughs, but the man who smiles, what was it? I don't know. I'll put it back in post place. But eventually he asks what she's running up from, and she, you know, in her nightmare, it's like every version of her. I love that they have the Red Lantern. There's actually the when she was infected by the man who laughs down there. And like before they can get going, Clark wakes up on a beach kind of thing. Again, doesn't know how he got here. And the very last scene is, you know, is the Aquaman family, let's say, like Aqualad, Garth, you know, Mira, but basically they're like, you know, it's time for me to become king. I own like 80% of the world, so I might as well. And that's kind of where that issue leaves off. Punchline was fantastic. Honestly, one of my favorite reads, and a lot of people thought it was going to be But no, it was really good. We don't get a, like, before she had fallen asleep, or do we? Because her, and I always forget their name, it's the current group that she's in control of, the House of Cards, or I'm so bad a DC fan for forgetting their name, the Royal Flush Gang. Okay, so she's with the Royal Flush Gang, and they are robbing, like, I want to say a bank or something like that. They all have, like, this, they have all taken a new version of her toxin that she has created. All of a sudden, the nightmare wave happens, and everybody falls asleep. For some reason, her and the Royal Flush Gang are not asleep. She believes it's because, like, the new toxin and the gas masks that they were wearing. She's pretty pissed at this because she wanted to try out her toxin on the people that were in the bank, but at the same time, she's like, let's do this. Let's rob the bank. Before they could get going, Batgirl shows up, but I'd like to zoom in and pay close attention to her face. She looks more like a Jokerized version of Batgirl. Punchline does recognize this instantly, that she looks like a Jokerized version of Batgirl. And it doesn't stop. Eventually they commence to fight, and the fight kind of goes a little too far, and Batgirl kind of kills herself. Punchline's like super amazed that this happened, happy to kill one of the Bat family kind of thing, but at the same time she was like, man, that was kind of too easy. She goes outside and finds Barbara's, Bat cycle, I don't know what it's called, and takes off and continues to have like this glorious night as a crook kind of thing. She realizes that the whole city's asleep, so she's like, let's do this, I'm gonna go do this. As this has been going, at the beginning of the story, she was told and informed that the clock tower, the Oracle and the Batgirls were using as a base, had been abandoned. So eventually that's where, she heads to, is, the clock tower, to claim it as her own, see what's inside kind of thing. And she does exactly that. But without getting too far into everything, you can see that stuff starts happening weird, like the stuff starts coming alive, trying to get her. But eventually, before she can get too far into it, she gets an intruder alert on the Bat computer. She doesn't even understand how that's possible, because she's already in there, and she should have, caused an intruder alert. But it is none other than a zombified Batgirl who is, back after Punchline again. Punchline at this point is kind of like, she doesn't know what's going on, and at this point she kind of starts realizing that something's not right. Everything's been too easy kind of thing. I don't think she ever really realizes she's in a nightmare, because a lot of the characters and villains do. But we commence to this whole fight. As the fight goes on, this zombified Batgirl starts like merging with technology kind of thing, like grabbing stuff, and she becomes like this massive like technology zombified monster kind of thing. While Punchline is in the Batcave, she's like, oh my god, this could be the worst place to, for this to happen. But at the same time, she's like, oh, I got all this stuff. So she ends up grabbing some Batgirl like glider cape, and she ends up taking off, thinking, she can get away from Batgirl. But as you can see, she can't get that far. The technology merge or whatever ends up grabbing her and just taking her back. And that's the last of this issue. She's just being pulled back into the clock tower. That's this one. Next up, we got Catwoman, and this one was fantastic. So there's one element to the book I'm not sure of, and maybe as DC fans you can help me out. I am not aware of Selina Kyle having a sister, also a sister that is like a superhero. I think her name is Sister Zero, and she's supposed to be the real sister of Selina Kyle. I'm not sure if this is, supposed to be part of the nightmare, like she really doesn't have a sister and she's just dreaming this. I'm not positive. For me, it's brand new. But it wasn't bad, right? We get Sister Zero, and basically she is a nun in real life, and, after hours she goes out, kind of fighting crime. She's already tussled with Catwoman back in the 80s or something like that, and had to deal with her, bring her down from this whole crime syndicate thing. At this point, Catwoman and the Sister Zero character are they're greeted, and we find out that they're not liked because, you know, Catwoman's the way she is, and the Sister Zero is a very religious person kind of thing. But they still do have family love. Upon meeting each other, basically Catwoman informs Sister Zero that there's this character named Joker that's running around. Sister Zero is not familiar with Joker, and it plays like a common trend throughout the book, but we'll get there. There's also something else I'd like to know. I read Catwoman and have been reading Catwoman for a long time, and I do not recognize this version of Catwoman. She has a major scar that goes across the, what would it be, the left side of her face, and she's missing an eye. She's blind in one eye. In the Catwoman costume, she looks normal, but when in these scenes, she takes off the, you know, her mask, and she's missing the eye. I don't know if this is something that happened in continuity and it just came back. I don't know. Eventually, Catwoman, like a big part of the book is Catwoman trying to convince Sister Zero to go after this character, Joker, and eventually she does. It does take some bleeding, but eventually Catwoman takes her to Amusement Mile, where Joker is known to hang out, this and that. Once they get there, they do find a version of Joker shown right here. We are not sure if it is the Joker. He's never really shown, and honestly, it's not. It's Insomnia dressed as Joker, but to Catwoman, in all effects, it is Joker. So they do this thing where they end up like taking out most of the, you know, Joker goons. Joker ends up getting away, but before the situation kind of goes down, there ends up being a situation where, like, Joker ends up getting up high enough, he ends up shooting this Tommy gun, and Sister Zero gets in the way, and she ends up getting quite shot up, as you can see right here. But there's also something else to note. As you can see, at the last second, she is saved by Batman. So we get to meet Batman, and I do mean that in the literal sense, and Catwoman finds out really quickly because she has current day knowledge of Batman. But real quickly we find out that this is not that version. This is basically day one Batman. He ends up getting bitten by a snake, because this whole time there are snakes all throughout this book. But he ends up getting bitten by a snake, and Catwoman is definitely confirmed that this is not the Batman she knows, that the Batman she knows would have been smarter than that. Not only that, he's not carrying any anti-venom or any kind of, you know, at one point she does call him Batman, and he does state that, how do you know that? I just came up with that name, it's not written down anywhere. It is day one Batman. We get to see some badass stuff, because it's a version of Catwoman that knows everything about Bruce Wayne, but Bruce Wayne does not know Selina. So basically she informs Bruce of Joker. Bruce does not know the Joker at this time and moment. He has not been created yet. So they are informed of, you know, he's basically told the story of the Joker, who he is, how dangerous he is, what happens once he gets going. And so he does convince Batman to, you know, go on this journey with him. But it's not even that. It doesn't even take a convincing, because the second she uttered certain things about knowing, for one, his name, Batman, he was kind of on board with that. Like, he was like, I felt like it was destiny, you're my soulmate kind of thing. You already know stuff about me that no one else can know. And that's kind of where this book leaves off, is just this grand mission to go get the Joker before he gets started kind of thing, with a day one Batman kind of thing. That's where this one leaves off. The very last one we got is Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman is fantastic because it does directly tie to the main story, but it's still a nightmare at the same time. It's more like we get to keep track of where some characters are, and this one, it's basically all about Justice League Dark. When the Nightmare Wave hit, we saw what happened to Wonder Woman and Detective Chimp. There was Santana. Currently, they are in a magic holding cell, being kept safe at the moment, kind of thing. And basically, that's what this is we are in the nightmare of you know, Diana and Detective Chimp, and shortly after they are greeted by Constantine. Constantine kind of like takes away the nightmare part of it and reveals, you know, a magical underlying realm to this nightmare land, and it's basically a massive maze set out by insomnia that they're about to trek through. As they go through, they mention certain things, that they're not supposed to get separated. They even do this whole thing where they tie each other up with a lasso, but none of it ends up working. They all get separated due to all kinds of stuff. But Greek gods in this one specifically plays a major part. We are going through Wonder Woman's, nightmare kind of thing. But as the story goes, there's mention of all kinds of different, like demigods and stuff like that. They were before the main gods in the Greek mythos. And it plays a major part at the end, because the ending of the book we get to meet like a Greek titan that we haven't seen in a while. But basically going through the maze, they run into all kind of stuff. They run into like the Minotaur, all these different demons. They do end up overcoming most of the other stuff. Eventually Constantine gets to the point where he gets too tired of looking for the rest of the Justice League Dark, and we do get to see that they're kind of going through the same thing. Excuse me. That everybody else is. They're all stuck in nightmares kind of thing. We do get this crazy scene over here where we do run into physical other members that aren't really talked about, like Man-Bat, Swamp Thing, Dr. Fate. Some of them are more known, but eventually the main part of the story is like Wonder Woman running into like an alternate version of her, the most deadly version of her, and it's supposed to be like not a ruse or whatever, because Wonder Woman's routed in truth kind of stuff. Eventually that this Wonder Woman character does change into this massive snake, and it just becomes this like basically fight for your life or run kind of thing. Detective Chimp takes off, but trying to get Detective Chimp out of the way, Wonder Woman gets chomped by this massive snake. I can't talk all of a sudden. Okay, so that's where this issue cuts off. We do get a side story, and it's all about Nubia, and it's another occasion where we don't get to see her before she ends up in the nightmare, but basically she's being called to the Well of Souls in the middle of the night. She thinks it's Magdala who's supposed to be down there. When she gets down there, she is greeted by Seraph. I think that's how you pronounce her name, Seraph. And Seraph explains that she hasn't seen Magdalene in a long time. She doesn't understand what's going on. She doesn't know who Magdalene is, but she's been down here by herself, keeping all the demons at bay kind of thing. Basically, once they once they get into mid-conversation, Nubia starts to notice this like blackness, symbiote looking stuff that's creeping in everywhere, like a darkness. Seraph explains that that's exactly what it is, and they need to go and stop it, or it'll be the end of the world type stuff. So it's basically like Nubia going through and killing all this type stuff. Eventually, at the very end, we run into, and I mentioned this before, but we run into a like very like nastified version of Gaia, which is supposed to represent the world, and that's kind of where like this one leaves off. I'll give you a hint that Seraph is not who she says she is. That's when she kind of turns into Gaia, but the book also kind of states that she might not be Gaia either, so that's kind of why I didn't. But hey, these are my reviews. This is my over review, or whatever you want to call it, of Nightwing Night Terrors Week 3. Man, I can't talk. It was just such a mouthful. Alright guys, but that is my review. I'm loving it. Honestly, some of these were better than others, but every single one was great. They were great stories. I'm looking forward to the second part, but not only that, the way they weaved this in to the main continuity of things is excellent. But that's all I got for you guys. I'm going to let you go. Please comment down below. I love everybody's comments, reading everything, getting me thinking, showing me stuff that I missed. Please, please, please. Alright guys, I will let you go.